Last week, I got to interview Dr. Nick Thompson, and he's arguably at the top of vets in the UK and arguably in the world. And normally, I don't really put all that much weight into vets' opinions because certain vets, well, about 90%, which is what the industry is agglomerated and conglomerated around, do work for corporations, and those corporations tell them what to sell, on certain occasions what to sell, and a lot of these people tend to get paid to say a certain thing. So you will have seen in dry dog food sometimes that, oh, it's recommended by a vet, and there's a little snippet of a vet recommending that sort of food or that product or whatever. And obviously that vet has been paid to promote that product or that service or that company. And so whenever I got to discuss anything with Dr. Nick, it was quite a privilege because the guy doesn't really do it for a corporation. He doesn't do it for anything that is the industry, and he's independent. He can say whatever he wants, and he expressed his opinions in a very prolific way. And so, I mean, this guy, as I said to him, has all the bells and whistles. He is the founder of Holistic Vet in the UK. He has a weekly program on YouTube that you can watch, Raw Pet Medics, with Dr. Brendan Clark and Dr. Conor Brady as well, and they discuss all things raw dog food. It's a wonderful program as well. And this guy is the founder of the Raw Veterinary Society here in the UK. He's the founder of Holistic Vet, as I said, and he's a member of the British Veterinary Association. And so we are going to run down a few of the questions I asked and offer some of my insights, because it was sort of an eye-opener the way he described and explained certain things, and very, very recommendable for you to watch that interview if you haven't yet. So I started by reading the definition of the Raw Veterinary Society as to what the gold standard diet is for a dog. What is the ideal diet for a dog? We see on dry dog food all the time that it says complete and balanced nutrition, complete nutrition, complete whatever, that sort of rhetoric. What is the gold standard? And these guys defined it as close to the dog and cat's evolutionary diet as practically possible. Manufactured from fresh, frozen, raw meaty bones, meats, organ meats, fruits and vegetables, minimally processed by mincing and freezing, with no added synthetic supplements, additives or preservatives. If we take that very definition and we apply it to humans, to us, that's literally the gold standard for us. If you think about things, you want food as minimally processed as possible. You want food that is organic, that hasn't been, you want to eat chicken that hasn't been eating corn in a 2x2 little cage for 2 months prior to their killing for your benefit. You want that chicken to be roaming around and eating worms and eating whatever that chicken wants to eat, and you want to eat potatoes that have been fertilized the right way. The same sort of thing applies to our dogs. And so whenever we talk about what is the best diet for our dogs, the closer we get it to nature, without being very happy trippy about it, with it being practical, as we say here, well, the better. And that includes avoiding all these ultra processed diets, ultra processed ingredients. And that ties in with the first question I asked. And the way he framed it was really interesting. I said, what are your thoughts of the main issues surrounding high carbohydrate levels in dog food? And the way he described it was, if you ate a bag of chips or a bag of crisps or a bag of whatever, tickles your fancy, like a snack, a bag of snacks every single day with your meal, 2-3 times a day, you would be the size of a house very, very soon. The same sort of thing would apply to your dog. If you start feeding your dog anything that's ultra processed, that's wheat, gluten, potato, rice, wheat, barley, corn, soy, oats, all these sort of things that we give our dogs as treats in their foods, and we give it to them every single day, that can have a very good impact in the dog's health. So the fewer the refined carbohydrates we give our dogs, the better. In addition, excess carbohydrates convert into sugar in the liver. So whenever we give ourselves too much starches, too many carbohydrates, we put weight on. So if we eat pasta 5 times a day, we know we put weight on. Why? Because that excess carbohydrates then converts into triglycerides, into fat, and that gets stored, which is another point Nick made, that your body stores excess fat. So you don't want to be feeding your dog high amounts of carbohydrates. And I thought that was very, very interesting, the way he processed and the way he answered that question. The second question I asked was, could you explain the role of vegetables in dog food, and are vegetables good for our dogs? And here he was again quite complimentary. He said that vegetables can be beneficial. We are talking about leafy greens, because obviously vegetables are carbohydrates and are also converted into glycogen, into sugar, into energy. But broccoli and cabbage and rice and wheat gluten aren't the same. They're not the same carbohydrates. They're not even remotely close. So we have to make that distinction. He said to lightly cook any veggies you want to give your dog, that they should represent a very small portion of your dog's diet. And this is something that I see a lot of the time with a lot of these grain-free kibbles and a lot of these low-tier kibbles, where the carbohydrates, where the vegetables, where the lentils, where the peas, the potato, the whatever, is way too high, is disproportionately high. You, at the end of the day, want to be paying for meat. You don't want to be paying for rice, for potato, for broccoli, or for pears. You want to be paying for meat, not for fruit. Having said that, he did say that vegetables can be very beneficial. And he also said that there are people who don't believe in veg, and this comes from the raw dog food camp. There's 2 camps in the raw dog food industry or associations. One who feeds veg, one who don't feed veg. One's adhere to the 80-10-10 and everything is meat, and the other ones is the 80-20, where the 20% can be veg. And as I've always said, we sell raw dog food and we sell pure meat and ones with vegetables, and we see dogs thrive on both. I don't think there's a massive distinction and comparison between the two. The two can be very beneficial. The two can be extremely good for your dog. as long as the vegetable content isn't 50% or 70%. And some dog food manufacturers put rice in raw dog food. They put 50% vegetables, and I don't think that's on. Again, as with kibble, as with anything, you want to be putting your money on meat. You want to be paying for meat. You don't want to be paying for filler. And so I thought that was quite interesting. I said, can you share your best... No, hold on. What can one do for their dog's teeth? Can you briefly share the best tips for dental health? And periodontal disease, again, is one of the most common diseases in pets nowadays. What he said was that bones are the best toothbrush there is. But he was very educational in the way he described bones. He said that you don't start running in the Olympics. You start running in your local park, and then you join a club, and then you start competing locally and then regionally, and then you end up in the Olympics if you are good enough. He didn't quite make that analogy, but he made a similar analogy with reading books. And so a lot of people will just give their dogs, who have never seen or touched a bone in their lives, something very complicated, a very heavy knuckle weight-bearing bone, and that is the sort of behavior that does cause problems with certain dogs. If your dog hasn't had any bones whatsoever, you have to start them small and easy, and something has to be quite easy to begin with, and then you can get into the knuckle bones and into the ostrich bones and into the bigger weight-bearing bones. But if you are starting something small, something that's not going to cause blockages, anything that's thinner to start with would be a lot better. And the bones, they are the file teeth, they are wonderful for teeth. He also mentioned a couple of the supplements with algae, with seaweed, and there's a few products on the market that do the trick. And what we always say on this channel is that your dog doesn't have salivary amylase to break down starches. So whenever you give your dog any starches whatsoever, they cannot digest them in the mouth, and so it's hard for them to digest any starches whatsoever and to break them down in the mouth. So the lower the amount of carbohydrates you feed them, the better. And so I thought that was a really cool way to present the bone, how to feed a dog a bone. It was very instructional. It was lovely, actually. I also asked him about canine obesity, and he said, I asked, can you explain why it's important to pay attention to your dog's weight? And he said, well, dogs can actually live 2 years less if they are fat, if they are obese. And so you should try to get your dog's weight back in line. And he said actually something quite nice, that dogs are family members, they're lovely, they keep us company, they make our hearts feel better. And it was quite emotional what he said, and that we should repay them by looking after them and by not letting them put weight on. And obviously the ramifications on diabetes, on the joints, on cardiovascular disease, on any other health issues, they are quite steep. And so if your dog has a bit of excess fat, try to reduce the amount of carbohydrates you feed the dog. Try to introduce some fresh food, portion control has to be at the forefront of what you do, and it's just a lot better. I don't think it's funny, I don't think it's nice, and I don't think any dog should be overweight. So that's my 2 cents. And then I asked him something quite controversial, not controversial, but something that I always wonder. And I said, why do you, being a vet with literally all the bells and whistles, divert from the general consensus and recommend fresh dog food instead of veterinary diets? Why fresh chicken, ground beef, organ meats and raw meaty bones over meat and animal derivatives, cereals, oils and fats, rice, etc., etc.? And this is something that I always ask and wonder, why are there so many veterinary prescription diets that address gastrointestinal issues, pancreatitis, low fat, for sterilized cats, for kittens, prescription dog foods for ideal weight, for diabetes, for this, for that, for the other? There's 2 or 3 common elements. The first one, excess carbohydrates in the food. Wheat, corn, barley, rice. I'm not really sure why veterinary prescription diets are filled with so many carbohydrates. The second one is ultra processed ingredients. We have your meat and animal derivatives, your chicken flavors, we have beef flavors, we have sugar, we have dextrose, we have car crashes of ingredients. And it's really, really sad, in my opinion, that a lot of these prescription diets claim to be formulated for diabetes or for pancreatitis or for sterilized cat or whatever. And the reality of the matter is that the ingredients are very, very poor. And what he said, among too many things that he said, was that what costs money is the meat, and manufacturers want to save money by putting wheat gluten and pearl barley instead of chicken breast and diced beef. That's why it's a matter of money, it's a matter of cost. If they do it with us, how they're not going to do it with our pets? And so he just alluded to the fact that a healthier, fresh diet is better than an ultra-processed diet. And we know that from experience. We know that the Mediterranean diet, wholesome, home-cooked ingredients, organic ingredients, things that go bad really, really quickly. If you buy something fresh, it goes bad really, really quickly. That is a good thing, not a bad thing. And so if something perishes quite quickly and you have to cook it from scratch, you know that's going to be good for you, as opposed to getting Taco Bell or McDonald's or whatever. Let alone our dogs who are predisposed to eating meat as opposed to anything ultra processed. Yet we insist in feeding our dogs ultra processed foods. And so those were some of the questions that were asked of Dr. Nick, and it was pretty cool to be interviewing such a guy. The guy has great knowledge on dog nutrition. He talked about nuts, herbs, and seeds. He talked about all sorts of things to do with our pet's health. And so those were some really cool questions I think I managed to ask, and I hope you enjoy the interview. And if you want to ask any questions, you can leave them below, and I will put them out in the next one.